Welcome to another episode of What's the Difference? The Shaman King edition. Last episode we saw Yo entering into a cave that would simulate death so that he could increase his Furyoku. It was very interesting, the various different adaptations, as in some we got to see that, as mostly the manga, we got a more natural progression into things. Whereas in the newer adaptation of the anime, it was a lot more choppy in areas, a lot of things that were kind of left out, but it still kind of kept the core principle of how everything played out in the manga. Whereas in the older anime, they actually completely cut out the interaction with Manta's family, making that no longer the reason why Manta was on such a timetable to get with Yo. Why they chose to cut out Manta's family is anyone's guess. We also had the inclusion of some filler characters. I guess, what was their names? Like Millie and Lily or something like that. Basically, two Team Rocket characters who made for a little bit better of a test of Yo's increase in skills in comparison to the little forest spirits that Master Yome, Yo's grandfather, sent after him in order to show off his brand new version 2 Oversoul. So, with that, let's get into the newest episode of Shaman King, which adapts Volume 7 of the manga and Episode 19 of the older anime. So we're hitting up Volume 7, Chapter 54, titled Slogan, and the older anime, Episode 19, The Two Big Souls. All included in Episode 9 of the newer anime, Yo vs. Ren, again. What an inspired title. Both versions of the new anime and the manga open up in China, mostly with us being introduced to Tao Ren's family and the colossal being that is their father. He is a big enough a dude. Although it's mostly in the various different adaptations that they make him look the biggest. Whereas with the manga, he looks fairly big. But the both versions of the anime, they go out of their way to make him look huge. Now, the newer anime decides to include a lot of the scenes that happen later on that show the viciousness of the Tao family. Why they chose to have this included in this way is a little bit off. I guess they wanted to just consolidate all the moments between June and her father to this one moment. But it's actually built upon later. Now, we have all the versions basically opening up to a certain degree with Calum, and Silva basically hanging out in their apartment in Japan. Because they only have so much money, they actually kind of live in a little bit of poverty. But, it's the older anime that really highlights this, with the fact that they only have so much to eat. But the manga decides to go from the fact that they don't have, electricity, so they're kind of suffering. The apartment, it's basically a commentary on, the living in such a place, such as Japan, you being kind of new to the environment. We even have a moment where a Japanese man comes bursting in saying, "Shut up, you foreign devils." A lot of racial tension here. It's a lot of interesting commentary for the most part. And then they end up being, contacted by Godiva, and the information that Ren will be under the tutelage of Silva for the most part, mostly because of the fact that Silva has such a vested interest in Yo the way he does. And then the manga goes back to the instance with June and the head of the Ren family, their father, and you know, ultimately you get to see that moment of how vicious he is. It's shown in a lot more detail in the manga than just crushing this panda's head. This poor panda didn't do anything. And it's just his bitterness at the nature of how the Ren family was treated and all that good stuff. All this power that he has. It's a very intense. And you see all the zombies that they have, various martial artists who were killed over the years. And they really go out of their way to make their father look almost like a demon for the most part. And the discussion with Silva and Godiva about him becoming the one to oversee Ren, it goes into a little bit more detail. The various different adaptations kind of make it a more subtle affair where he's subtly outraged, but he doesn't go over the top. In the manga, he's furious. He's absolutely furious from the get-go. But Godiva still has this moment where she talks him down, gets him to kind of understand. We also have a moment where it's clearly shown just the difference in power between Yo and Ren. Whereas with Yo, he has less Foryoku than Ren, but in terms of just the power of their spirits, Amidamaru is a little bit better in terms of just spiritual power as a whole. So it really just shows how close of a match it's going to be. And then you have the moments in the older anime where the battle isn't taking place just yet. They choose to put in some filler where, they'll slowly be building towards all of that. Whereas in the manga, it's the start of the day. He's getting ready to head out. The newer anime, boom, it's already the moment, almost the time. He's already at the appointed meeting place and all that. A lot of stuff that shows that Tamao is staying with them. The Asakura family, basically. Anna and Yo and all that. I don't think that's brought up till later on in the manga, honestly. And I like that, Yo and Amidamaru are having this discussion about what's going to happen, everything going to be alright. And this little moment from the brief section in the manga where Ren is just constantly working out. He's getting himself all kinds of jacked, showing up. And they really want to build towards that tension of the upcoming challenge. Every other adaptation is just like, nah, we just getting into it. You've waited long enough. This version is just like, nah, we'll tease you a little bit more before we actually get into the action. There's this weird melancholic air about things, and it's mostly because of Tamao and the fact that she's very worried because, this is his last chance to actually win the day. And so we get to the moment, he's got her Asami, he's got his Oracle pager, he's set to head out. They even have this nice moment where Tamao and Anna see him off, which wasn't in the manga. I wish they would change up his style a little bit, but they don't want to, alter things too much. Because I love the way he looks in the manga. And so they head out. And then Manta has this heavy air about him, because this is the final challenge. See how things go. And Yo's just completely laid back. He just changes in public. And now the newer anime shows that Tamao is there. They have similar scenes where Anna and Tamao are just talking about whether or not Yo will win. I like this moment where Anna is at least smiling a little bit of her confidence and ultimately Yo will win the day. The older anime also had this moment where Yo was just changing in public. It's just like, man, the anime really just loves to show off too much of Yo just stripping down to his skivvies. And now it's brought in that Tamao is here. So the manga and the newer anime just chose to have it be like, oh, Tamao's just there. But the older anime is just like, we'll show you when Tamao actually arrived and all that. But this moment between Anna and Tamao is given a lot more time to breathe in both the older anime and the manga. Not so much the newer anime. I guess they felt that they could sum it up a little bit quicker, which again kind of loses a little bit of the character moments, especially the moment that Tamao ultimately becomes Anna's gopher, getting groceries and stuff like that. Then you get to the moment right before he arrives, this heavy air about it. It's very nice. A little bit of atmosphere. But they build upon it, like in both the manga and the older anime. Newer anime, it's very slight. In all versions, he has this grand entrance, like a demon lord. For some reason, they have Ren get off of his literal high horse, despite the fact, no, he uses it to talk down to Yo. He's very haughty. All versions, Yo is very, like, ready to go. He's ready to throw down. He's of a more simple mind of things. Yeah, and a lot of things just play out all the same, honestly. I actually kind of enjoy it. And it's weird because you don't have the same confrontation between Amidamaru and Basson. You know, they get right to the fight in the older anime. But, you know, I love this rivalry they start to kind of build up between Basson and Amidamaru because they're protectors of their masters, Yo and Ren. It's very nice. Interestingly enough, the older anime really just wants to get to this fight. It's just like, nah, we gonna do this. You've waited long enough. We're just gonna do this fight. But no, there's a little bit of pageantry that's going on here. And, you know, it just doesn't, it just kind of builds. There's this whole moment between everybody. So points deducted from the older anime for just not really jumping into things. Taking so long to really build into the battle. And so the fight commences. Taoren, you know, because of his massive gains, he's very athletic and all that. We get to see just the strike. Chinese slash dance, boom, massive destruction. Yo gets to show off his new Oversoul version 2. I've completely forgot about naming off the chapters and all that. I've passed by chapter 55, A Grave Reunion, 56, Slacker, and now 57, Clash at the Meta Cemetery. That's because, ultimately, this whole fight flows really fast. Every adaptation of it, this fight flows. Newer anime, older anime, manga, this fight just flows from one moment to the next because it's all combat and it's all pitched combat. There's never a dull moment during this entire clash between Yo and Ren. And once again, the older anime just rushes into things, whereas the newer anime, nope, boom, it's actually a little bit behind in terms of things. Ren manages to get behind Yo, but Yo just naturally blocks the strike easily. And that's because Yo can see through Amidamaru's eyes as well, which is something that Ren's just like, wait, you can do that? I love it. Yes. These great moments, these great attacks, really just showing off the skill and strength of all of them. The moment with Silva, it's really intense. Honestly, I prefer the way Basson looks in the older anime, because the newer anime gives him more of this boxy shape for some reason. The ball form, where it's just like this armored, pole arm weapon, is so cool. Though the older anime makes it look like Ren is a little bit more taken off his guard, whereas all the other versions, no, he came to this fight to throw the fuck down. He is not in any way, taken off guard of anything. And you really see the power emanating off of Ren in other versions. Then his power grows, and you get to see the next evolution of his Oversoul. Interestingly enough, the newer anime has decided to add in a few more strikes and attacks from Ren. And have that be the moment that he shows his improved, more powerful Oversoul. And then we enter into chapter 58, Display of Power. And like, dude, this whole volume is basically the throwdown between Ren and Yo. Nothing but them throwing down. Like, how many chapters is it in a volume? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Usually around 10 or so, but the older Shaman King manga used to only have, I guess, 9 or 10 with a backup story or something like that, but like the whole volume is damn near all this fight. And I love it. Great work, great job just displaying the intensity of this attack, their abilities clashing and all that. The newer anime, I think, just wanted to flow right into Ren using his upgraded Oversoul. With that, Ren is putting a little bit more Furyoku into. Although the funny thing about the increase of Furyoku, it always makes it seem like he just has an overflated soul balloon. And now Ren goes into the attack, throws him up, flies up with Basson, and that's when you get, here comes the giant fist! Bam! Knocks him into the ground with the double hammer. Boom! And Yo just completely gets buried. But Yo actually uses his Oversoul as a bit of a cushion, which isn't elaborated on in the older anime, honestly. He just instantly reforms his Oversoul right then and there. Honestly, I'm still questioning why the newer anime only has Silverwing talk, whereas usually Silva is talking with all of his spirits. It's weird that they've chosen to leave out all of his spirits this way. I'm really wondering what the choice was in all of that. It's like he just favors Silverwing. Love having Silva give the play-by-play commentary. It's a good way of just having things be explained in a more natural situation. And the explanation, I wonder why the older anime chose not to have the display of their Furyoku levels. They really don't show off. Yeah, because that's something I'm remembering from the older anime. They don't really show off the numbers digitally the way that the manga and the newer anime show it, like through the Oracle Bells. And that was the whole purpose of the Oracle Bells. But honestly, the older anime almost makes the Oracle Bells seem like an afterthought to a certain degree. And just more explanation about the intensity of the situation between Yo and Ren, the differences within their power, how Yo is having a hard time standing up to what Ren can do, but he just continually brings back his Oversoul time and time again. And now, just like that, we're into chapter 59. Bam! They don't have the moment where Manta, runs away in the older anime. Although, ultimately, we find out that him running away doesn't really amount to too much. But then Yo has that moment where he realizes what he needs to do in order to take out Ren's Oversoul. Exactly what the downside to inserting all that Furyoku actually is. Also, just see they play more of the laid-back nature of Yo in the manga and the newer anime. It's interesting because the older anime actually doesn't do that. They just have him instantly know what he needs to do. But it highlights a little bit more what he's learned in terms of fighting with Faust and all that. It's interesting because this is the one of the few moments where it's the newer anime taking a breather, because the manga takes a breather right now. But older anime, no, it chooses to jump continuously back into the fight, which again really shows off that the fight between Yo and Ren is just really something that the older anime really wanted to lean into. But I think all versions of this series really lean into the fight between Yo and Ren. That juxtaposition, the yin to the yang, all that good stuff. And then you get the attack, and then boom, just managed to run Amidamaru right into Ren, basically exploding his oversoul. Again, hit that weak point for massive damage. Chapter 60. How? It's a legitimate question. How you do this? And Ren's just completely at a loss. It's just like, how did you beat my oversoul with that? It had to be a fluke, so he goes back in with his colossal oversoul. And Amidamaru gives him, helps him figure out how to go at it. It's actually Amidamaru who's just helping him figure out the best ways to dodge and duck. Honestly, that's one of the failings of the newer anime. They don't explain that it's Amidamaru who is helping Yo predict where to dodge, what to do. But at the same time, it was already kind of revealed earlier on that Amidamaru is guiding Yo, helping him to see attacks that are coming at him from every direction. And it shows the benefit of having Amidamaru have at least a little bit of autonomy in terms of what he's able to do. Because of that, Amidamaru is just able to really guide Yo in fantastic ways that, with the way that Ren goes at it with Basson, just doesn't really help anything. And because of that, it really throws Ren off of his game. And then, because of that, Yo's able to get in close because of the disruption that, Ren is feeling. He's feeling frustrated. He's just like, how is he dodging me? How is he avoiding me? How is it possible that he's just evading all my attacks? And just like, Yo's just like, no, I'm not evading all of them, just the really seriously bad ones that could really do me a lot of damage. And so Yo brings out the Halo Blade, which is just this massive strike that cuts Basson to ribbons. Just ribbons. Annihilates Basson in every way. And it's an intense situation. Although, again, the older anime really makes it, shows it that Ren, he's just gone through the ringer. He's just exhausted. But the newer anime and the manga, it's just like, yes, he's kind of down, but he's not on his knees exhausted. No, he's still trying his best to stand tall, which I kind of prefer, at least to a certain degree. It's like, answer me, how are you doing it? How have you managed to dodge my oversoul? It's just like, yeah, I didn't dodge anything, man. My oversoul has been hit multiple times. I've just kind of been blocking with it. And then we get to chapter 61, before the opening ceremony, which shows off a little bit of Faust and the preparation that he's undergone in order to get Eliza up and walking again, and how he's setting out to just kind of, head to the opening ceremony of the Shaman fight. Again, something that isn't really necessary. It shows you that Faust is heading out for some reason, and you'll find out later on why he's heading out. More of Silva giving the play-by-play to his spirits, And the reasoning behind why, while Ren has such incredible Furyoku, it just isn't standing a chance against Yo's. And there's a more detailed reasoning behind all of that. And that lies a lot within the confidence that Ren has being shaken the way it is. I love the fact that they're depicting the shadows as their spirits. And then, interestingly enough, the both versions of the anime decide to take this moment to go a little bit into Ren's backstory, his history, why he's the way he is. Whereas the manga decided to cut over to Horo Horo and what's going on with him. And everything that Ren has seen, the destruction, the depravity, why he's turned into the person that he is. I like that they cut over to Horo Horo a little bit in the opening ceremony for the Shaman tournament and all that. Just getting a little bit of, they completely cut all of this out. A little bit of an introduction to the boys, another of the teams, which we'll really get to know as it goes forward, and a lot of the commentary from the other contestants. You get to see a little bit of a preview of a lot of these characters that you'll really get to know. Some of them are complete throwaways of characters. Others, they will be integral to the story going forward. And the fact that at both versions of the anime, I don't know if the older anime decided to add this in later, but I really don't remember the scene in the older anime, and the newer anime doesn't touch on it at all. Now, you even have this moment where we get to see, kind of a stereotypical way of doing African shamans, but those who are actually behind the mask have a great amount of involvement and a preview of this one character who's really gonna be important. Oof. It's gonna be intense. And then Ren has his kind of freak out moment, and they decide to include this moment between June and her father, kind of talking things over about how June sees Ren and the problems that he has. That deep down he's nicer than what he appears. It's just that his upbringing has kind of led him to be this rage-filled being. And speaking of rage, he just has this freak-out moment where his shirt just rips off. And that's the moment that ends the episode in the older anime, which isn't a bad place to end it by any means. It's just unfortunate that they've chosen to end it there. And then we pick up back with episode 20 of the older anime, Soul Meta Cemetery. Brief recap, as you always do. This is the issue with Ren, what he's suffering with, all of his personal problems and demons. Poor Ren. He's just a poor boy with a horrible family. Very much like the Zoldyck family, let's be honest. And ultimately Ren will lose. Highlighting his backstory again, Soul Meta Cemetery, boom. They're replaying a lot of scenes and moments. Repeating a lot of scenes, which is unfortunate. They were doing so well before in not repeating any scenes. And then Ren just desperately not wanting to lose or anything like that. And then you finally have the moment where he calls upon his horse. And then boom, I have the high ground now. And that's when in the manga you have a little bit of this backstory. Where it's just like he sees so much death and destruction, piles of bodies, all that good stuff. It's unfortunate. And he brings forth the spirit of the horse and all that. Although, in both the manga and the old anime, he just brings it out of a stone tablet. But for some reason in the newer anime, it's almost like he summons the spirit from heaven itself. Yes, this intense moment. Love it. Good stuff. But then the older anime cuts back over to a little bit of Tao Jun talking with her father because we gotta have a little bit of filler. We gotta have someone else doing the play-by-play of events, despite the fact that we already have Silva talking about all of this. But the conclusion of this discussion, I like it better when it happens a little bit further towards the end of the fight, because I don't know, it just shows that deep down Tao Jun always knew that he would ultimately lose, and by the time it's already happened, it's just like, yeah, bam, there you go. There's irrefutable proof that he was always going to lose. And that isn't to say the events of all of this still don't kind of have moments where we cut away from this fight. There's a lot of other stuff going on. It's just, for some reason, they decide to really dwell on the discussion between June and her father, which only leads to him feeling that, you know, her father feeling that, oh, okay, no, you've decided to go in a direction that I'm not okay with. Has her locked up, and a lot more postulating between Ren and Yo and all that good stuff. The manga and the newer anime actually decide to have this moment where Faust and Horohoro meet for the first time. The newer anime especially decides to highlight this, but because I guess it's prominent, Faust just being a bit of a creepy weirdo. And a little bit of the back and forth between Yo and Ren. Very important. Gotta have that. Okay, and now we have the moment where June talks things over with her father a little bit. So just try to convince him the situation with Ren is very unfortunate. Needs to stop pushing him so much and all that. That the way that he's been brought up is just goes against the very person that he really is deep down and all that good stuff. I love the fact that June is just really going to bat for Ren this way. And then the statement, ultimately he will lose. And that ends volume 8. I thought the fight would be over by the end of this, but no, it's still in fact going. My god. And then you enter into volume 8 of the manga, because this fight just won't quit. Enter into chapter 63, I Don't Overreach, with June's father being upset, just like, Ren will lose? How can this be? Answer me, damn it! Yeah, a lot of stuff all over the place. Each adaptation is just kind of doing its own thing at this point. It's insanity. I still love the comments from Dao Jun about the similarities yet differences between Ren and Yo and all that good stuff. And she talks about how ultimately Yo was able to defeat her, but through different means because he's different, all that good stuff. It's very sweet. You get to see a little bit of Yo's progression, how he's developed and all that good stuff. Trying to get everything to this one point because it's just everything is kind of really doing its own thing to the point where I'm just like, okay, where does everything sync back up again? And it's here, this moment where you see the full breadth of what Yo can really do. That he hasn't actually been pulling out everything. Chapter 64, Decision. Now it's boom, they both have this massive oversoul going at it. And it shows that Yo isn't overreaching, but he is just bringing everything out the best way possible. And then you get this massive strike from Ren, and just Yo just manages to parry it completely and utterly. Love it. Massive explosion of power. It's an intense clash. And I love the fact that whereas a lot of the contestants weren't that interested at first, it's just like, okay, now we're very interested in what's going on. And boom, massive strike. They've basically used up all of their Foryoku. And then Ren's oversoul completely dissipates. And then Ren has this moment of lament where he's just like, I kind of always knew. I just couldn't beat this guy. Just had too much capability, too much potential. I just couldn't Bruce Fort my way from this. Interestingly enough, his lament goes a lot longer in the newer anime. And then it looks like Yo did it. Looks like he won. But then he's just like, actually, I'm out of Ryoku too. It's just like, oh god, I lost twice. And it's gonna kill me. And I love that they just started bickering over it. It's just like, who won then? And Yo being like, if Anna punishes me, you're coming too. And Silva intervenes and all that good stuff. Like, the fight is a draw. And a little information that's just like, okay, what exactly is going on here? Interestingly enough, there's one thing that the older anime chooses not to do, and that's have all the patch show up right then and there. Although, for some reason, the newer anime decides to have them all in their mass, whereas in the manga, they're not. But the Godiva says, yep, you all pass, you all go on to the opening ceremony. And boom, ends the chapter, ends the episode. Whereas in the older anime, not so much. Things are kind of still going. But beyond that, it's the opening ceremony for the Shaman fight. But older anime decides to continue to have Yo and Ren bicker a little bit more. Interesting that the older anime decided to outright show what happened to June after she tried to go to bat for her brother, but everything else is left a little ambiguous. And then they decide to have this moment where they're like, see, once again, the older anime has decided to kind of go a little bit off the rails and have this whole, like, get-together of all the contestants. Well, the contestants that Yo is already friends with. And boom, just like that, Ren is just hanging out with the group like it's nothing. Like, it at least took a little bit of time in other adaptions. But nope, here he's already outright hanging out with everyone. It is so odd. Although that does happen later on in the manga, but at least there's a little bit of time. I guess that's as good a time as any to just end thing. It's just like because Ren's involvement with the group just kind of comes out of left field all of a sudden. It's very interesting and kind of fascinating, and it builds on to a lot of what happens later down the line. Despite the kind of person that Ren has been up until now, he deep down has a little bit of a good heart. But alright, let's end it here before we get into the party of everyone moving on to the next phase of the Shaman fight. So tell me, what was your favorite part? Honestly, a lot of these adaptations had a little bit of one-to-one going on here, but it's the stuff that was happening in the background that was the major differences. Whereas the manga had a lot of moments where we saw a lot of the other contestants, them commentating on the Shaman fight, but the fight between Yo and Ren, how that was going. You know, we got to see their insides and a prelude to a lot of characters we'll see later down the line. The older anime decided to focus a lot more on the battle of ideals in terms of how June feels about Ren and how her father feels about Ren, and how he just doesn't see that a lot of what they've done to Ren has taken away the deeper nature that's going on there. But June understands her brother at least a little bit more and kind of had this change of faith after meeting Yo. Something in her just kind of clicked with how Yo was, and it really changed her entire outlook. Whereas with the newer anime, it really cut down on basically all of that, like all of that. And while it did have a lot of the moments between June and her father, we didn't ultimately see what became of June, where her father outright tried to capture her and lock her away almost as a traitor. Now, we cut a little bit with the June and her father, but we also had a little bit of a moment between Horo Horo first meeting Faust. They seem to really have wanted to highlight that in the newer anime, but cut out all the other stuff going on at the Shaman fight, arena and all that, just completely doing away with that, aside from the whole Horror Horror meets Faust stuff. So very interesting, very fascinating. Honestly, once again, manga is probably my favorite version. The older anime did some cool stuff. The newer anime did some cool stuff, but it was very obvious both were invested really in the fight as a whole. The fight between Yo and Ren was the thing that really mattered the most, and honestly, all adaptations did really well with it. Like, all adaptations did a good job. Newer anime, older anime, it was very well animated, very well done. It was obvious that it was something that both animation staffs were looking forward to, and they really brought their A game with it. But I'm interested to hear from you. What was your favorite adaptation in these two? Do you feel that the newer anime did a better job of depicting the fight between Yo and Ren, or the older anime? Or are you more of a manga head like myself, and feel that the older adaptation had the manga had the pacing the best? I'm interested to hear from you, but until next time, please like, comment, and subscribe depending on how you felt about this video. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.